Hello, Lissa here. I wanted to talk to you today about the ICF and the Code of Ethics. This is a very interesting topic. It tends to be something that when you're going for an ICF credential, ethics is assumed that you're following the ethical standards. Yet there are places where people can get pretty shagged up in regard to the ethics of a situation. So let me walk you through how you even find out more about ethics. I'm going to share my screen. So here we are at the ICF website. That is coachfederation.org. It's pretty easy to find ethics. Just put a search in and type out, ethics. What will show up is the results for that. So there is the ethics, there's a code of ethics, there's the ethics facts, an overview. There's also a CE course on ethics where you can watch the educational offering. I believe what you get from this once you complete the quiz is you get 3 ICF Core Competency CEUs for your having spent time on the ethics, which is also what is required when you're renewing, is that you will occasionally need to have these ICF CEs for your ethical training. So let's go back one though to the ethics themselves. So the Code of Ethics is broken into Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct. If you look at the Code of Conduct, it has a PDF that talks you through the Code of Conduct, and this is much more in relationship to ICF program accreditation. So many of you, this will never apply to. The other one is the Code of Ethics, which will apply to you. So if you go there, you can see definitions of what is ethical behavior. You can see what they mean by professional conduct at large. You can take a look at conflicts of interest, of professional conduct with clients, and with confidentiality and privacy, as well as continuing development. All of us who are ICF coaches have made an agreement, and we've signed an ethical document that says that we agree to the ICF Code of Ethics. And so it's pretty important to understand what it is that you're agreeing to. So understanding what it means, to what the definition is of not only ethics, but what it means to be a coach, what it means to be a client, what it means to be a student, or a sponsor. In an organization, you may have an organization that purchases your services, they become the sponsor, they are your client also, as well as the client that you're seeing that works for organization X. They too are your client. These dual roles can sometimes get sort of crazy. So being able to start to pay attention to what do these different definitions mean, and then really beginning to look at what is professional conduct at large. I'm not going to go through each of these with you, but one of the things that is really useful, and I find covers a whole host of different ethical dilemmas that people might find themselves in, is the idea of transparency. So let me give you an example. I was a volunteer with the ICF Washington State, and I was in charge of pulling together this webinar that was going to be done with somebody, and we were going to be using it along the west coast of the US, and all the different chapters had been invited to it. And I worked pretty hard to pull this particular event together, and as a result of it, the event host who was doing the presentation was selling a class, a training that they were offering, and as a result of all the hard work that I had done, offered to give it to me for free. So on the surface, that looks like something you might go, that sounds great, I worked so hard, I should be able to get it. Or you might be saying, oh my God, that's an ethical dilemma. Why did you do all that work? And it's almost like you got paid to do it. So there's 2 different ways we might look at this particular ethical dilemma. So if I had just said, sure, love to take this seat at the table, looking forward to the training, I could have very easily found myself out of ethical integrity. It would have been something where I might not have even done that for any sort of negative reason. I may not have even realized I was out of ethical integrity. By the same token, just saying no is a reaction, and it may or may not be a useful reaction because maybe I could have the training and also be in ethical integrity. What I decided to do was say, thank you so much for the offer. I need to go talk to my board about this because I'm only in the position of even having this opportunity to pull this event together and meet you and ultimately be offered this invitation because of my role with the local chapter. So I went back to the board of ICF Washington State at the time and I said, hey, I pulled together this whole presentation in this event and I've been offered a free training as a result of the work that I did. And I want to run it by the board and get your feedback, and whatever you decide is what I will do. So we had a long conversation about what was being offered, why it was being offered, what all I had done, whether my intention was to get a free pass to this event, which it wasn't. And ultimately, the board was like, you've worked so hard on this particular event. We absolutely support you taking it. So I was able to take that training. So I guess the point is that there isn't necessarily an absolute yes or an absolute no. Ethics come in multiple shades of gray, and I have found for myself that transparency, besides knowing and understanding ethical dilemmas and having read through the different ethical standards, things of that nature, I have a good sense of what ethical behavior looks like. And I also use a lot of transparency about why I'm even considering doing something. So by reading through your ethical standards at the ICF, it starts to give you some senses of what it is like to be a professional coach and the ethical standards at which you are held accountable. When in doubt, be transparent. You can always contact the International Coach Federation and say, I have an ethical dilemma and I'm curious what this fits within and whether or not I'm stepping outside of my boundaries. As a coach, you do not have any sort of legal defense around whether your client has confidentiality if you're subpoenaed by a court of law, for instance. You don't have client privilege like a lawyer or a therapist might have. You are a coach, so you can't maintain confidentiality when illegal activities has happened. By converse, you also are allowed to have relationships outside of the coaching relationship with your clients, unlike a lot of other professions. And as a result of that, you need to be very mindful of healthy boundaries that you might be keeping with a client. How do you show up as a coach if you are too close of a friend? And these are questions to noodle around on. But let's just stop here with ethics. You can always go to coachfederation.org. There's a lot of information. There's facts on ethics. There's quite a few articles on behaving in an ethical manner. Plus, the website itself just has a lot of information around ICF and the ideas of ethical standards for professional coaches. So I invite you to go there. The link will be below the video, and I hope this is useful looking at ethics. Cheers.